You are listening to another Beat Chip podcast, episode 2 of series 1. We're talking about cruising. This is Rick, aka Lobo, Pinches Lowriders, and this topic, this series is kind of going to be talking about a little bit of cruising, the things that I experienced back in the 90s. That's where most of my history comes from, obviously, with my age and the generation of low riding that I did comes with, basically, was in about 95. I started cruising like a lot, actually in a car, not just running around in the streets. And, the lowrider community back then, you had the different car clubs. There was some people still gang banging. There was car clubs that didn't get along. There was still drama. And on any given day, we were out there cruising. At the end of the night, it'd be like we'd be leaving the strip. Pretty much, it'd be dead. Everybody faded away on an average night. And but you would see, broken glass from windows, from bottles. You would see bumper jacks and tire irons. And don't get me wrong, I'm not interested in all this stuff. We did, and I say we because the people I was with, but we and myself, and I was always driving because we were in my car. But, we were always ready for anything to happen. And there's always competition out there. Everybody was trying to, talk to the females that were out there, the carloads of women, whether they were in lowriders or not. Cruising was a whole different thing. And that's one of the things that has changed over the years. But, in the 90s when it was out there, you had everybody out there. You had the gangbangers, and you had the partiers, and you had the party girls, you had the homegirls, you had the cholas, you had every type of person out there in a car, because for the most part, that's what was in San Jose. It was known for cruising. So you can have any type of person out there, and we were mobbing, whether you were in a lowrider or not. And I always like to reiterate that, because sometimes I find old pictures I'll post and people are like, well, where's the lowrider at? Well, I'll tell you, cruising was cruising. And in my generation, basically, if you could pack a car, you were out there partying in the streets. And that, or, roll solo. There was times I went out there solo and I just cruised in my car, in my Impala. And the funny thing is like you would see, like, pretty much I could go out there by myself and I would run into some homegirls or something. And then they're like, can you take us cruising? Yeah, jump in, get in. And so there was always a way to meet up with people, to have fun. We were out there drinking. Don't get me wrong. We were all out there doing what, alcohol, low riding, cruising, all that stuff, it all goes together. And we constantly we're out there. Like I said, it was a big party in the streets, and it was every weekend. So almost every weekend, unless it was like storming outside in San Jose, you could be out there and find people cruising or hanging out. If it was, the weather wasn't all that great, there was times when we just were posted up in the parking lot at 7-Eleven on King and Story. There was really nobody out. We're just chilling. We had nothing else to do. We're all freezing our asses off, wearing beanies and jackets and drinking, we're drinking coffee and stuff like that from 7-Eleven to stay warm. And that was how dedicated some people, or actually how much we didn't have nothing else to do. But in general, if we had money for gas, we was out there cruising. And this is something that, like I said, many years, I think until about 2005. So for 10 years, it was like every weekend or every weekend possible on, we're out there in Santa Clara Street. We're out there in King and Story. It was nonstop back in that time. And I mean, I don't know. I don't think I don't look at it as a long time ago. I just think about, that was the generation we were in, and that's what we did. We went cruising every weekend. If there wasn't something else to do, we went cruising. And for me, like I said in the first episode, car shows wasn't really a thing for me at the time. Didn't have to go to a car show. Didn't have to pay to go to a car show. We just need money for gas. And at the end of the day, you get people and be like, hey, well, let's go cruising this weekend. All right, well, you got gas money? Like if you were broke, you could find someone that wanted to go cruising that had money, and we put money in gas. And you got to remember, $20 in that day would fill up my tank from my Impala, and I can drive to work for a week, like with $20. So literally, we can put $20 in my gas tank and cruise for the whole weekend. It was that easy. But it's just one of those things where a lot of people don't get how cruising was just very natural occurrence in San Jose. So, like I said, in San Jose, we did, we cruised Friday night. Saturday night was usually the better night. And then most of the time we cruised in the afternoon on Sundays. And in the summer, it was nice and hot. You'd have people out on a Sunday afternoon, with convertibles. You'd have a lot more of the ladies out, It just depended, but it really had to be, when it come down to summertime, it was like off the chain. And, you'd be in traffic, we'd be sitting out there, and, one of the things, you always had to watch your back. You always had to have something, basically there was always somebody set tripping, or there was, the gang members that were hanging out, and there was times when we got jumped, like people came out of nowhere and rushed everybody that was like kicking it at 7-Eleven. There was all types of drama. There was times we got, rushed at the dog, Wiener Schnitzel. And like I said, this is the height of the 90s, mid 90s. There was a lot of gang drama in the middle of all the cruising stuff. There was either norteño, sureño stuff, and then we all know San Jose, so there was always the basically the people that were cruising and out there just minding their own or having fun were all the norteños. And I don't really want to get too much into the gang bullshit. It just basically, at the time, if you weren't norteño, then pretty much it was just drama. It was just like shit would pop off, and people would go out there looking for trouble or looking to catch people off guard. So that was one of the downfalls of being out there in the 90s, was just all that stuff. And like I said, I'm not trying to glorify. I'm not here to glorify any of the gangbanging. I don't even condone it anymore. There's more to life. I love the unity nowadays. And but I want to get in. I just want to talk about, like I said, in the mid 90s where I'm from. This is really how it was. So, you were constantly getting harassed by the cops. Once again, everybody was a gangbanger to them. Your car always fit the description of something or someone. Something happened. Oh, this car fits the description. Yeah, okay. It's like, so like I said, in the mid 90s, I had a 77 Impala, and we were constantly getting pulled over, constantly getting searched. And I was, at that time, never that stupid to carry anything in the car, or do anything dumb. It's just like, I knew after a certain point we're going to constantly get pulled over. So it was just to be smart about it, and have fun, and, there was many times out there where, people are like, oh, this is happening, or this people drove by and these people were set tripping, and and it was back in the time when we did what we did. And like I said, I ain't innocent in it, and I understand how the drama went and how the bullshit happened and the gang banging and everything else. And I seen it firsthand. I was part of it, and I could tell, now I'm very grateful that it's not like that no more. So that's one of the things I look back and reflect, like, now you can pretty much cruise in peace. With not the worried about the gang banging drama, because they don't really come out to do all that. You have youngsters and we have other stuff nowadays where people still don't know how to act, but usually it's not as prevalent as just like different gangs and stuff like that. It's just usually some kind of personal beef and dumb drama where people don't know how to keep it out of the environment of the cruising. So, like, once again, in San Jose, we cruise usually first in Santa Clara all the way down to King and Story. And on a good night, it was bumper to bumper the whole way. Um, it always would thin out, probably about past the dog before that. And then it would get deep again. And, we had so much fun. There was times when I remember when I have friends that were in car clubs and stuff like that. And like there'd be times I had my cousin with me and I'd be like, oh, drive the car or something. And I'd jump out and he'd be in the car because, mind you, we're barely moving, bumper to bumper traffic. And then like I'd be talking to somebody or something. And then I realized, oh shit, they moved hella far up. And then my boy goes, dude, sit on the hood real quick. And then fucking my homeboy, he had a 62 Impala. And I sat on the hood. And then he just like drove me up to catch up to the light, to catch up to my car and stuff like that. And it was like that. And then, there's one story I like, it was probably either Boulevard Nights or Cinco de Mayo. And it was packed, like barely moving, completely packed. And so I'm in my car and I go to make a U-turn, and I make a U-turn on King in Santa Clara. And it was so packed that I didn't have enough room. Well, the same guy in the same car, the 62 Impala, was blue. And I believe it's brown impressions. And so I wasn't going to clear him. So he hits 3-wheel and he locks it all the way back, and he drops a 3-wheel. And I was able to, because my car was lowered, I came underneath his bumper and everything, didn't even hit the car. And then I made that U-turn. Now that's the kind of crazy shit, because you don't see stuff like that no more. And it's one of those stories where like, yeah, whatever, I'm sure someone's going to say, yeah, that's bullshit. But, maybe homeboy is going to hear this and goes, oh, I remember that. There's people out there that's seen all this stuff. Remember, we don't have video. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have everybody out there with a camera phone. You didn't have all that. So these are the things that made cruising. And I tell these stories. I'm like, people battling their hoppers, the like the 65 from Brown Impressions. And this is, people are like, well, damn, you must really like Brown Impressions. But no, I'm just saying, these are the things that really caught my attention, that have stuck with me through all these years. He had that 65. He was hopping the back of it. And that was one of the big things he would do. Driving down the street, he'd start hopping the back. And because it was a dancer. So, but he'd be driving and hopping the ass. And he's coming off the ground, but it's something that you didn't see every day. And this is why obviously it stuck with me. Everybody has their own stories because they've seen what they've seen. You had all the different, different car clubs, Eminence. You had, excuse me, they had a minivan out there that was lifted, and you had, Aslan Imperials. There was pretty, they had a couple cars that were fucking crazy, and they would either hop or had like crazy lockups. There was a lot of things that happened. I mean, like I said, it was a party in the streets. We'd be posted up at the Pink Elephant parking lot, and, either people were hopping or just sitting in their cars, were sitting there drinking, bullshitting. That's one of the things we did every weekend. So sometimes the dates and what we were out there for really is really hard to sit there and separate, because it was a every weekend thing. And the like Boulevard Nights, for example, like that was a whole weekend. Like nowadays it's just one day and it's one night, but they would do that. They would be Boulevard Nights weekend, and people would be out there cruising from Friday to Sunday, like literally a whole weekend of cruising. Like, and it was from the east side to because it was Story and White. Boulevard Nights was Story and White, and they would cruise White Road. They wouldn't sit in the parking lot of San Jose Blue Jeans. They didn't do that. In the beginning, they actually cruised the streets. And then from there, people would end up downtown or they end up on King and Story. It was really mostly an East Side thing. So Boulevard Nights eventually, you know, it was Story and White, and then it would be King and Story. So you'd have all of that, and then you'd have, obviously we'd be cruising on King Road, and and then eventually, Santa Clara would be like the least of the cruising when it came down to Boulevard Nights weekend. So, as in Cinco de Mayo, like I said, we cruised Santa Clara Street, first in Santa Clara. Everybody cruised downtown. It was, and I go into how bad it was. Like once again, so when we had the year of the Cinco de Mayo festival, the last one we had, because we had the riot, somewhat, whatever you want to call it, but I was out there. So I was out there, and we're on Santa Clara across the, where the parking lot right there is. I believe it's Santa Clara and 6th Street. And there was, and to go back in some of the years, Cinco de Mayo, it rained. So you'd be out there cruising. There'd be girls in like, Ben Davis, Dickies. They'd be in a white tank top, and it's fucking raining. So it's basically a wet t-shirt contest when we're out there walking around, and everybody was dressed to impress, but then boom, it's raining. So, but the year where it screwed up the whole Cinco de Mayo festival, everybody was in the streets, and I really don't know how it really started, but there was the cops were trying to break it up, like get people out of the area. And then literally, so it's 4th Street. I remember now. So I'm on 4th Street where the Chevron's at, and Santa Clara Street. And so things started happening, and then all of a sudden the cops are, they're in their thing trying to get everybody to leave, and then people start throwing bottles. Now, who these people were, I don't know. All I know is that shit started happening. They start throwing bottles at the cops, and pretty much everything just got chaotic. I wasn't stupid to stick around. I remember I cut out. I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's get the fuck out of here. It ain't even worth it anymore. So after that, pretty much that was the end of the big Cinco de Mayo celebration in San Jose. Because of that, they didn't want to do it no more. They didn't. They basically didn't do it the year after that. For the next couple years after that happened, they would come out. We'd go out there cruising, and then you'd have minivans full of cops, and they would come out, and they had basically riot gear. They all had their shotguns. They were all vested. They had their rifles, and they would just stop in the middle of the street. They'd get out of the van, and no matter where we were at, they were like, "You guys need to leave now." And we're like, "Damn, okay." And basically, that's how they treated us for the few years after that had happened. It was just nonstop. They'd come out in big groups. They'd be, they'd have their rifles and their shotguns, and they're all vested up, and they'd come out of all these, they'd come out of like all these undercover, like, it'd be, first it was minivans, and then the next year, of course, they probably upgraded to SUVs and stuff like that. But they would be driving around in their undercover SUVs and stuff like that, and they just jump out in a group and tell everybody get out, like leave the parking lot or this or that. So we couldn't. It was a constant like cat and mouse game of where everybody tried to end up. And so when they started getting so strict like that, what would happen is that they direct everybody to the freeway. Well, there was pretty much a time when, and then a lot of people remember this, where we were pretty much cruising the freeway because they sent everybody to the freeway. So everybody's on the freeway, and we're just mobbing, like chilling, and everybody's there because they wouldn't let us go nowhere. And for many years after that, and up until I think even last year, pretty much Cinco de Mayo, they shut down Roosevelt Park. They shut down the dock. They didn't want nobody. They don't want nobody coming out there for Cinco de Mayo. And don't get me wrong, to this day, there's still people acting stupid. They're revelers. And that's one of the biggest things because, I think this year coming up, they have some stuff planned for Single Mile. And but last year, even though they were taking the laws about cruising and they said they're gonna, take off the no cruising signs and all this other stuff, and even though last year was pouring rain, they still harassed the lowriders out there. And so it was a big thing. So now San Jose, I think they're going to be embracing more of the lowrider events, and hopefully Single Mile this year coming up is going to be, a better event. But once again, Single Mile, Boulevard Nights, the two biggest cruising events in San Jose throughout my experience growing up here and going out and going cruising. And like I said, the biggest thing where people didn't understand is that we didn't have to put out a flyer. Cruising was not planned. Cruising was not something that we had to plan. It was just every weekend. And if it was going to be hot and sunny and it was going to be hot at night, it was cracking. I mean, realistically, there wasn't a summer night on a weekend that didn't have a ton of cruising. And even if it was just like everybody was just on King and Story, it was still packed. And there was days where, you couldn't get into that parking lot on King and Story where 7-Eleven was at the time. Now it's Target. But that was just a big open parking lot. And it was just as big as it is today. It's just a couple, like the shopping centers weren't there on the corner. And then where that grocery store is, that's where 7-Eleven was at. And basically, but it was all open. But there was times when that whole parking lot's full. And once again, it's not full of just lowriders. It's full of everything. I mean, I've seen people, there was people in IROCs, there was people in Hondas and Toyotas, and there was carloads. There was always carloads of girls. I've seen carloads of girls, 2 carloads of girls, they were together, and they're like tripping off dudes, and one like stops and the other one rear-ended them, and fucking they get out and they're laughing their asses off because, they just wrecked 2 cars. But I mean, in general, they were breaking their necks. And that's how people met. That's how people, you knew people or you seen someone or something like that. It was like, oh, there's that Hina from last week, boom, who, where's she from? Then you find out, like I said, they're from out of town. A lot of times they're from out of town. So then you don't really know how to get a hold of them or see them. And you got to get up. You got to go up to the car. You got to have some nerve. You got to have some nerve behind you and go say, what's up? Because the funny thing is that when we were posted, like say we pull over and park and get out the car, you get like a carload of females and they drive by and they're like, what's up? And they throw their hands up and they're like, hey. And then, but that was just something that they did because at the end of the day, they never it was rare if they actually pulled over and talked to you. It was just constantly chasing them. And then you pull up next to them and you're like, hey, what's up? And then they're like, all quiet. It was always like that. It was always a cat and mouse and it was always a game. And then, like I said, in the first episode, it's like sometimes it was your ladies' friends and stuff like that. So you had to be careful who you were with. I mean, one time I went cruising with my cousin and his lady at the time. I had a bench seat in my Impala. And so the girl he was seeing was sitting in the middle and I'm driving. And lo and behold, who pulls up is my girl at the time and with her friends and they're cruising. So she's thinking the girl's with me. And so they're, basically she starts throwing drinks and shit like that at me. And I think I got a milkshake on my front windshield as we're as we're driving. And I'm just like, dude, it's drama. But that's how it was back then. It was always something or somebody. And, it's, it wouldn't be the first time or the only time because there was other times when I would take out a homegirl from school, from high school or someone that, I knew. And then I'm sitting there driving with them. And then all of a sudden, like their fucking dude or ex-dude or whatever, like jumping on the hood of my car, that's my lady, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, God damn, there was so much drama when it come down to cruising. Cause if you was out there doing the damn thing, there was always something. And this is like, it was just ridiculous. And to this day, I always make fun of people like, damn, dude, like, don't go cruising, especially now that there's all the cameras and everything and video and everybody doing all this stuff. I'm like, if you ain't supposed to be out there or you out there with somebody you're not supposed to be, don't be. because going cruising now, everything's being filmed and photos and everything else. And if you got something to hide from somebody, well, basically you should not be out there. That's a big mistake. That's on you. Because I don't know how many times I've literally had people ask me to take them out of the video because they shouldn't have been out there. Well, guess what? You can't do that. It doesn't work like that, and that's just one of those things where people just keep going on and on and on about getting caught up out there. Well, then don't go out there if you're going to be getting caught up, especially nowadays, because people will be watching my YouTube videos and be like, oh man, I'm not supposed to be out there. Okay, well, then you shouldn't have been out there. I mean, that's just the same difference. I've had that happen with car shows and everything else like that. But as I'm saying, is the experiences of going out and cruising, there was a lot going on back then in the 90s. And, there was times when I didn't have a car. There was times when it was just me and my cousins and his dad, and we were in his truck. And there was times I was out there, I even went out there on my fucking mountain bike when I didn't have a car. And I would be working and I'd get off work and I'd cut through downtown to see what's happening out there just to go see, And it was just, like I said, cruising for me was, I got to say, like, an addiction. It was just like I had to go out there. I wanted to be out there. I wanted to see what was going on. I wanted to see who was out there. I wanted to have fun. And it was how we met people and kept in touch with people, and with San Jose, like I said, there's a lot of people out there where I just, I was there doing my thing, and I would watch the car clubs, and like I said, with Lowrider magazine, you got to read all the articles and figure out what's what and who's who. But it was a whole other thing where you start learning, like, who, these cars do this and these cars do that. And I always paid attention because I knew, like, if certain car was out there, I knew, oh man, they're going to battle there. If so-and-so's out here too. So I would see a certain car from, or a certain car club, and they'd be out mobbing. And then I'd be like, oh shit, gotta flip a bitch, because wherever they're going, I want to go, because I know there was going to be some action. There was going to be some, people hopping and stuff like that. So that was a thing for me. And obviously, it kind of, I see how it sticks around now because I like to go where the action is. But that was a thing. Like, you would see a certain car club and they would have the one car out and you knew that car was a dancer. So if you saw that car out and they had it out there on a cruise night, well, not a cruise night, but out there cruising, then you knew that they're looking for someone else. And sometimes you would pass by someone and you knew that they were a hopper or a dancer. And I'm talking about the car dancing, because that's what was big in the 90s for San Jose. We didn't have the hops like LA. We did car dancing. Like, that was us. Like, if you think about all the hopping and stuff like that happens in LA and everything, in the 90s, basically, you were car dancers. That's it. Everybody put in the work to have their car dance, reinforced frames, all that other stuff. It looked crazy. But that's what it was in San Jose. And so you would see one car and you go, oh, okay, there's, so-and-so. And then you, like, driving down the street, and then you would see, what happened would be is I would see the other car club with their dancer going towards the parking lot where I just passed another car dancer. And I'd be like, oh shit, it was about to crack off. So I'd like make a U-turn, like right there, bam. And I'd, get over, hit the block, fucking turn around and try to get to where they're at. And that was how you knew shit was about to kick off and they were about to battle and it was going to be dope. And man, I wish I had a camera back then, because there was real, street action back then in the cruising scene with the car dancers and all that stuff, with the car clubs and everything else. So literally, I'm over here, me and my cousins and stuff, and I see something happen. Like, I see that, like I said, I see a car go by, and I'm like, hold on. I'm like, I just like flip a bitch right in the middle of the damn intersection, and everybody's like fucking sliding all over the place in the car. And I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, they're right there. They're going to go battle. Because you always, like I said, when you see these cars and they meet, they would just take off right there in the street or in the parking lot. So that was how, that's what I did. And you know, that was cruising. If you were really into the scene, if you really liked the action and the hydraulics and everything else like that, that's kind of how it was. And but I was always really, really like looking for those cars, that action, the carloads of different females and stuff like that. We were out there. That's all we did. Cruising was that. It was just a big party, and um, it was just the stuff that got we were hyped up about. If it wasn't, it was Aslan Imperials or it was Brown Impressions, luxurious. They started in San Jose around that time. All those car clubs, they always had somebody ready to battle. And Eminence, of course, we seen Danny. Like literally, I would see Danny drive by, and now he's Uso and car club, but he was one of the most popular NorCal. He had one of the baddest cars and pretty much big time competitor. He competed in all the car shows where the dances and stuff like that, the car dancing. But in the streets, it was the same difference. You'd see him drive by, and it was exactly what I did. I would just be like, oh shit, let's go follow him, because we knew that if he's out there, they're gonna be battling, and that's how it was. And mind you, like I said, this is not just like the cars that are hoppers that are being trailered. These are cars that are dancing, like literally all four coming off the ground, all four hopping the back, everything else. And so they're out there and they're driving and they're looking for other cars to basically compete against. And that was the fun, that was the real low riding shit that was happening in the streets of San Jose. I never ventured out of San Jose back then. It was always just San Jose, downtown San Jose. It was always, if I didn't have a car, I went cruising with someone else, or I went out there on the bus and walked, but that was everything I seen out there during those times. And that was the biggest thing, other than all the other bullshit, but it was finding where everybody was going to be at when they were going to be out there doing their cars and battling. And it was a whole different, it was just a whole different scene, because this was any given weekend, especially in the summertime. Wintertime, not so much, because we were just out there being a fool in the wintertime and just chilling. And, but like I said, I could go on any given weekend and run into people that I knew. And that's what I liked. That was the scene. And once I got a taste of that scene, even before I had a car, that's where I like to be at. Because, you had downtown, you had the clubs, you had everybody out, and, it was jam-packed in the streets, and it was just, you could just walk down the street and just see different shit, and it was fun. Like I said, there was all kinds of drama, but I'm not here to promote all that bullshit because it's changed since. And that's one of the things I can sit there and say, yeah, our cruising isn't the same, and it's all organized pretty much nowadays. But the reality is that there ain't so much drama. Things happen. There's always something happening. There's always gonna be somebody that doesn't like somebody and causes problems. But the good thing is that it is really became a family thing, and it's been a thing where you can bring your kids, and cruising for the most part anywhere you go. Because I've been to cruising in Whittier and Van Nuys and Fresno and Merced, Modesto, Sacramento. In the current way of the low riding and the events and the cruising and everything else, it's gotten way better. It's nicer. It's so much nicer because it's not even stressful. It's fun. And now with all the laws changing and everything else like that, it's going to be more fun, I think. And I think it's going to be, the scene is going to change. And we all know the pandemic changed it. Excuse me. So we all know that, like I said, the pandemic changed cruising. It brought it back. So the first year of the pandemic, there was nothing to do. We couldn't have no car shows. All the car shows got canceled. And that's almost 4 years exactly to this month. You understand it? 4 years ago to this month was the last time we was normal, or we were just living life. But anyways, so all of a sudden it was oh, it's a car, let's do these birthday parties where they drive by birthday parties, and the whole term of drive by changed, and it became, I'm gonna do a drive by birthday party, drive by wedding, we're gonna do this and that. And then, oh well, for cruising we can be out and about, but we can't have a car show, we can't do none of this because it wasn't safe supposedly. And then I just remember Cinco de Mayo that year I was in San Jose on Friday night. I believe I was in like Modesto Saturday night, and then Sunday I was in Sacramento, or it could be vice versa. But point being was, it was cruising was off the chain, and then guess what? Cruising just came back. Cruising, like, well, we can cruise, can't have car shows, but we can cruise, and bam. So now you have all this cruising, going to Van Nuys, going to, all the different places. It just cruising, just the uptick in cruising. Everybody said, fuck it. We're going to go take our cars out. If we're in our car or whatever, they're saying we can't do this. We can't go to the mall. We can't go here. We can't go there, but we can sit in our car. And so basically the whole concept of cruising was just 100% reinvented. And with all the cruise nights and everything else, man, I was like, this is cool. Cause to me, it's like nostalgic. It's like finally, because for a while it was just all about the shows and no one really cruising. Gas is really fucking expensive. And of course, obviously in the beginning of COVID, gas was hella cheap. So yeah, cruising was what to do. People were just didn't know what to do. They were cashing out their 401ks and buying, built cars, and it was just like nonstop. So with that, once again, cruising is a big deal. And this is one thing, like, when it comes down to everything else, and I think I'm going to talk about this in the next episode, the difference between the car shows and the cruising, and how important it is, because some people won't go to car shows and some people only go cruising. You'll see some cars that are show quality, but all they do is cruise, and once in a while go to a car show. So, but once again, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to hear me out and listen to this episode, cruising, and I will be doing more. I appreciate it, and yeah, thank you. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. This is Lobo. I'm out.
Pinches Lowriders.